Hello, my name is Nishat Noor and welcome to Millennium Headlines. This week's top headlines are: U.S. suspects more direct threats beyond ISIS. Lockdown begins in Sierra Leone to battle Ebola. In ruins of Ukrainian town, residents crave food, water, and peace. Afghan presidential rivals finally agree on power-sharing deal. Provincial vote is seen as a test for Sri Lanka's president. UN reports Yemen deal with rebels. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to meet in New York on September 27th. Now the details to this week's top headlines. As the United States begins what could be a lengthy military campaign against the Islamic State, intelligence law enforcement officials said another Syrian group, led by a shadowy figure who was once among Osama bin Laden's inner circle, pose a more direct threat to America and Europe.
As the United States begins what could be a lengthy military campaign against the Islamic State, intelligence and law enforcement officials said another Syrian group, led by a shadowy figure who was once among Osama bin Laden's inner circle, posed a more direct threat to America and Europe. American officials said that the group called Coalition had emerged in the past year as a cell in Syria that may be the most intent on hitting the United States or its installations overseas with the terror attack. The officials said that the group is led by Muslim al-Fadli, a senior Qaeda operative who, according to the State Department, was so close to bin Laden that he was among a small group of people who knew about the September 11, 2001 attacks before they were launched. There is almost no public information about the Coalition group, which was described by several intelligence, law enforcement and military officials as being made up of Qaeda operatives from across the Middle East, South Asia and North America. Members of the cell are said to be particularly interested in devising terror plots using concealed explosives. It is unclear who, besides Mr. Fudley, is part of the Coalition group. The director of the National Intelligence, James R. Clapper Jr., said on Thursday that, in terms of threat to the homeland, Coalition may pose as much of a danger as the Islamic State. Millennium TV, Naim Mohammed.
Sierra Leone, the most ambitious and aggressive government campaign against the Ebola epidemic gripping parts of West Africa, began on Friday when Sierra Leone ordered everyone in the country to remain indoors for 3 days, suspending commerce, emptying the streets, and halting this beleaguered nation in its tracks in an attempt to stop the disease from spreading.
In Sierra Leone, residents are facing a government order to stay inside their homes for 3 days. In a country of 6 million, it's an unprecedented effort to combat Ebola. Local officials say, for the most part, people are listening to their call to stay indoors.
The lockdown has been very successful since the beginning of the day. We have been monitoring our 7 chiefdoms within the districts, and from the feedback we have been receiving is that there is large-scale compliance.
Yet Ghanaian officials say many people cross the border into their neighboring country without going through health controls.
There's an increasing number of people coming from Sierra Leone into Ghanaian territory. Most of them don't have the Ebola symptoms, but we really have to take the precautions because there are a lot. It's a very challenging process.
A challenge as well for those trying to obey the government. Families worry about how they'll survive. This father of 9 says staying at home will cost him 3 days of work. Families are receiving food handouts, but he says it's not enough.
The day when I start the 3 days from yesterday, I start now for Sidon the 3 days. And then if we will get money, where I will buy low Sidon at home. So from now, I find it difficult to say for today, what I will get.
Meanwhile, thousands of healthcare workers are going house to house, looking for those infected. Yet the charity group Doctors Without Borders says even if suspected cases are identified, the country does not have enough hospital beds. More than 2,600 people in West Africa have died from the outbreak over the past 9 months, with more than 560 of those from Sierra Leone.
Rebel fighters picked their way through the debris of the city's airports last week, pointing out the bloodstained stretches and the corpse of a Ukrainian soldier tangled in the wreck of a burned vehicle. The battle for control of the city of Luhansk, one of the most ferocious of the 6-month conflict in southeastern Ukraine, had left the airport and surrounding villages in ruins.
Rebel fighters picked their way through the debris of the city's airport last week, pointing out the blood-stained stretchers and the corpses of the Ukrainian soldiers tangled in the wreck of a burned vehicle. The battle for control of the city of Luhansk, one of the most ferocious of the 6-month conflict in southeastern Ukraine, had left the airport and surrounding villages in ruins. The guns have fallen silent here since Russian artillery and troops helped break the siege of the city and led Ukrainian forces to abandon the airport on September 1st. But Luhansk remains on war footing, without electricity and running water and with little food. Millennium TV, Naeem Mohammed.
The candidates for Chief Minister of Yuva province are seen as proxies from the upcoming battle for the presidency. Jaswindra Rajapaksa, son of the Speaker of Parliament and nephew of the President, is the chief ministerial candidate for the dominant Sri Lanka Freedom Party. Haran Fernando, a charismatic leader of the United National Party, resigned his seat in Parliament to oppose him.
The candidates for Chief Minister of Yuva province are seen as proxies for the coming battle for the presidency. Shashendra Rajapaksa, son of the Speaker of Parliament and a nephew of the President, is the chief ministerial candidate from the dominant Sri Lankan Freedom Party. Haran Fernando, a charismatic leader of the United Nations Party, resigned his seat in Parliament to oppose him. Both sides held huge rallies when a 48-hour ban on politicking went into effect. In rallies in the towns of Mahiyangana and Walawaya, President Rajapaksa emphasized that his government had defeated the Tamil Tigers, a brutal insurgency group, in 2009. The Sri Lankan government has been criticized by international human rights groups for failing to investigate allegations of possible war crimes during the war, in which as many as 40,000 civilians may have been killed in its final month. Yuva is widely seen as a bastion of support for the governing party, which owned 72% of the vote in 2009 provincial elections and secured 25 of 34 seats in the Provincial Assembly. Millennium TV, Naeem Mohammed.
The special advisor to the United Nations in Yemen said late Saturday night that the government had agreed to a deal with the rebel group to end weeks of protests and days of violence around the capital.
After 4 days of intense fighting between Shia rebels and Sunni militiamen in Yemen's capital Sana'a, a UN-brokered agreement has been signed by the president and the Shia Houthi movement to end the current political crisis.
The ceasefire will start immediately in Sana'a. We've come here to sign this agreement in order to stop the Yemeni bloodshed, which is taking place in every street.
But it remains unclear whether or not this agreement will translate to a ceasefire on the ground anytime soon. These updates come as Houthi militias are reportedly gaining ground militarily across the capital and taking control of several government buildings. This was followed by the resignation of the Prime Minister Mohammed Salim Basindwa, and it was not immediately clear if his resignation had been accepted by the president. And while many families living in Sana'a have left their homes to escape the fighting, and others have been trapped, Yemenis await news of when the fighting will stop, now that the agreement has been signed.
The two candidates for president of Afghanistan have agreed on a power-sharing deal that will give the losing candidate substantial influence in the next government. Initially, the American brokered deal Saturday night and promised to sign it at a formal ceremony on Sunday.
Afghanistan's election commission announced a new president Sunday, ending months of tension with a power-sharing agreement between the two leading candidates.
The Afghan nation was waiting impatiently for this happy day. Today, you will have witnessed Kabul markets were crowded and people were out with big hope. May Allah bless you all with success and prosperity so you can be in the service of the Afghan nation day and night.
The agreement comes 3 months after a disputed runoff threatened to plunge the country into turmoil. Ashraf Ghani Ahmadzai was named the winner, with opponent Abdullah the chief executive. But the commission is yet to release the final result totals. Earlier, Abdullah's supporters had threatened to form a parallel government in his northern stronghold. But under the new unity agreement, he will share official duties with the new president and will be in charge of carrying out government policies. The White House released a statement welcoming the deal as an opportunity for increased stability, but many are urging its swift implementation.
The fact is, the uncertainty of the past few months have taken a toll on the country's economy, its governance, and its security.
For residents, many happy to see an end to the immediate political crisis, but uncertain what the future will bring.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will hold bilateral talks with Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on September 27th in New York on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will hold bilateral talks with Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on September 27th in New York on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, announcing that Prime Minister Narendra Modi will meet Hasina on the margins of the UNGA, which will be their first bilateral meeting. External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Said Akbaruddin, however, did not give the date for the interaction between the two leaders. Sources, however, said that the two leaders will meet on September 27th after addressing the UN General Assembly. Millennium TV, Naeem Mohammed.
Thank you for watching Millennium Headlines, and we'll see you next week.